Today, we're going to talk about deontology. This is a theory of right action according to duty. We'll talk about duty and its origin, what obligations duty creates for us, and how we'll determine what we're obligated to do. In our simplified ethical equation, deontology doesn't care about parthik or argam. It only cares about the action itself, and whether that action is fundamentally right or wrong. We don't care about motive, and we don't care about effect. Before we get into it, let's frame modern deontology in its historical context. The father of modern deontology, Immanuel Kant, was an 18th century German philosopher, making him a contemporary of Sir Isaac Newton, the British scientist. Kant was very interested in Newton's work, and often tried to recreate his experiments for himself. This is important because what Newton was doing for science, Kant wanted to do for morality. When Newton discovered gravity, he wasn't inventing anything. He was simply uncovering a rule of how the universe works. Kant's deontology is trying to do the same, simply to uncover rules of how the moral universe works. Given this lofty moral scientific goal, we can take our meta-ethical graph and say that for Kant, the x-axis measures adherence to the law, or what we'll call duty. And, just like Newton was able to uncover rules of the universe through rationality, rationality is the basis for Kant's moral law. Any good action is good in and of itself, what we philosophers call a priori, or before the thing, meaning it is good even before you can explain why. We discover which actions are good in and of themselves by aligning our own rationality and not interfering with others' rationality. This state of pure rationality is what Kant calls goodwill. Acting from a goodwill respects our own rationality and others' rationality, and that is the basis for uncovering the moral rules of the universe. Once we follow rationality and goodwill, we uncover our obligations to one another as rational, autonomous beings. Autonomous here means self-ruled, but the important part of that self-rule is that we each of us individually submit to the rational law. This is the foundation of justice and society, that we all could do whatever we want, but we recognize that as rational creatures, we should respect others' rationality and our own. This respect for capital R rationality gives us respect for the capital L laws of rationality, which are the moral equivalent to gravity, fundamental, a priori, good in and of themselves goods that we oblige ourselves to follow. We owe some of these obligations to others. We call these duties. And the reason we owe duties to others is because they are owed rights. All of us, as rational beings, have duties we owe and rights we are owed. We fulfill these rights and duties by adhering to the highest moral law, the categorical imperative, which states, act only in accordance with that maxim through which you can, at the same time, will that it become a universal law. Will here means to will into existence, or to make real. In other words, we know we have found a moral law of the universe when it is possible to extend that law to everyone. Now, this is important. It doesn't mean it's desirable to extend the law. Not at all. Kant does not care about your feelings, nor the consequences. We're not talking about what would the effects be if we made this a universal law. That would be something more like rule utilitarianism. He means only that it is possible. For example, we couldn't will that everyone will only tell the truth when it's convenient for them. If we did, nobody would believe anyone ever. There would be no rational basis for truth. Yes, it would be unpleasant, but Kant only cares that it would be impossible, rationally speaking, for this to exist. Think back to our very first day of class, when the slides had that arcane logic language on them. That's exactly what we're talking about here. If it's syntactically or logically invalid as a phrase, it's not a universal law. Just like 18th century science was trying to discover the physical structure of the universe, Kant has found a way to discover the rational structure of the moral universe. What this means is that Kant deals in universals. Lying? Always bad. Killing? Always bad. Nielsen might jump here to ask, but what about when no? Always bad. If we treat people as a means to anything, happiness or otherwise, then we've failed in our moral duty to respect them as rational, autonomous beings. Because of this, Kant has no time for trolley problems or other thought experiments. If you have to do thought experiments about contexts, he would say, it's not a universal law. We can discover the rational structure of the moral universe by pure reason, not by what-ifs. If we do this, Kant believes, we'll achieve a kingdom of ends, where we all treat each other as rational, autonomous beings who have their own rational projects and good wills, as ends and not means. This is the basis for everything from social contract to justice to democracy. Okay, great, you say. I'm ready to go out and treat people as ends and to respect their rationality and my own. Then, as a doctor, your terminally ill patient asks you to help them die with dignity through euthanasia. Do you respect them as a rationally autonomous individual and do what they ask? Or do you respect yourself and your fellow doctors by following your obligations to do no harm? Does this count as killing? What about your own moral integrity? There are so many different moral duties in play here, it doesn't seem like you can fulfill all of them. Don't panic. W.D. Ross is on the way to save the day.